artist and educator who lives and works in Portland. She's exhibited nationally at places like the University of North Carolina, Pacific Northwest College of Art, in Portland, Carnation Contemporary in Portland, and Soil in Seattle, Washington. She's also exhibited internationally in Luxembourg and Australia. She's a member of the artist collective Carnation Contemporary in Portland. She's been granted residencies in Culture Shock, Walford. That looks German. In Luxembourg, and New Harmony Play Project in New Harmony, Indiana. She's been a recipient of a Career Opportunity Grant from the Oregon Arts Commission and supported the Ford Family Foundation, as well as project grants from the Regional Arts and Cultural Council. She holds an MFA in Visual Studies from Pacific Northwest College of Art and a BFA in Painting and Art Education from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Please help me welcome Elizabeth Arzani.
It should be on. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Well, thank you, Corey. Thank you all for having me. It's a great opportunity to be here and to share my work with you all. I always love to start artist talks with this image, which is actually two images. On the left, it is weathered advertisements, and on the right, it's this weathered tree bark. And I took the images in close proximity, or found them next to each other, and I found them really intriguing, where their texture is similar but different. And I think of my art practice as similar to that, where as an interdisciplinary maker, I'm often working between writing, printmaking, ceramics, sculpture, and I'm looking for the seemingly opposite and trying to find the connections between things. So another way, or shorter way to say that, is I'm inconsistently consistent. I also love to show this illustration from a children's book on sound. And I think it does a really great job just to show the complexity of communication. And I really think this statement is true. Sometimes it is hard for us to understand one another, and then we feel lonely. Just because you say a thing doesn't mean that the person, or that you're heard or understood. This is also from the same book. It's showing an illustration of an ear, the question, "Can you hear me?" And I like to show this too because when I'm working with collage, and I kind of think of collage as foundational to the way that I work, regardless of the medium, I'm also often taking fragments, disparate parts, and I'm looking for the ways in which they connect, or studying the ways in which they fail to connect. In grad school, I'd say 5 years ago, I started to think about my writing practice as material for my visual art practice. And this was kind of hard for me. It felt really vulnerable to take my writing that was in a small notebook and make it really large and put it on a wall for people to read. So I started to cut and crop my words. This was also at a time when I was moving to a new city, moving to Portland. It was during the wildfires, the pandemic. There was a lot of weight and grief. And in this experiment with cutting and cropping my words, I found it fascinating that the shapes I was making, it rendered the text illegible, but the shapes still seemed somewhat familiar. So I was also kind of thinking about, can my words be modular? I was just moving back to the US. I had packaged all my stuff in boxes, taking it apart, trying to put it back together, making sure it transferred safely. And I was kind of wondering, can my words do that too? If I were to take them apart, can I put them back together again? I had also just moved from Central Europe. I'd been living in Luxembourg for 2 years, so I was thinking in coming back to the US that it would be easier to communicate, that I wouldn't have to be translating between languages. But I was humbly reminded, that miscommunication often exists just within one language, even in my own native language. So I was thinking about that a lot, and also in grad school, I really started to work more with screen printing, works on paper, and also ceramics for the first time. Not the first time, but it was kind of my unexpected detour in grad school. I was kind of surprised that I started to like ceramics for the same reasons I had historically disliked ceramics. Ceramics had always kind of misbehaved for me, and I guess in 2020 I just really wanted something to fight with and to like put my frustration onto. So this was one of the first pieces that I made, sculptures that I made in grad school. It was kind of this absurd sculpture that I just kind of threw everything at. It has wood, cardboard from like moving, cement, plaster, and then it has this ceramic piece on top. And I really loved the tension in this, in the ceramic part where it's like collapsing, but then also forced to function. So it kind of takes me now to applying to show at Nightingale and wanting to do this show about language. And I had 2 years. And during that time, I also felt like I had a loss for words. All of a sudden, it was like, yes, do the show. And then I didn't know what to say. So I had to actually practice what I tell people in workshops, what I tell students when I'm teaching, is to start where you are, which is harder said than done. But for me, that's, I think of myself kind of as this collector of sorts. I'm like the bowerbird on the right. Just, you can kind of see in my studios where I was sitting and all the stuff around me. And for me, collecting often looks like carrying a sketchbook around with me everywhere that I go, carrying on my person, drawing in the in-between times. And all of my sketches are also linked on my website. Now, these also look like really beautiful places, but they're not always. Start where you are also looks like sketching on aisle 1 of the grocery store waiting on your flu shot. Or, well, this was actually kind of lovely. It was by the river, River Rocks. But you know, you might be on a middle seat on your way. There's a connecting flight in Dallas, so your flight attendant is wearing cowboy boots. Stuck in airports, jury duty. I did always want to draw in a courtroom though. Zoom meetings, where I do pay attention, but I draw a lot. I also gave myself permission, now this started in grad school, where dog walks are also part of my art practice. Where I'm starting to notice and record the color stories that catch my eye in different locations, looking down, looking up, different seasons, times of day, and just so that I have that kind of reference I can look back to for inspiration. And then of course there is also, I write a lot, so I have a bunch of little notebooks, a lot of them. But I returned to this show that I saw in 2015 at the Henry in Seattle by the artist Anne Hamilton. And I really love this quote, and I return to it quite a bit. It says, "In silence or in speech, reading and being read to are other forms of touch. The words of poets and writers stir us. When this happens, we may be compelled to note, copy, or underline, and often to share that touch. By passing the book from hand to hand, by reading out loud, or by sharing the page." So basically what she's describing is called a commonplace, which I didn't know that word until I saw this exhibition, but I have a lot of commonplaces, including this like 6-year-old list of possible titles that I've kept for a long time that come from the things I read, the movies I watch, the songs I listen to, or even just conversations. So I decided for this show that's going to open on Friday, I would start with my list of possible titles. It was in a conversation actually with the head of the creative writing department from Pacific Northwest College of Art where I studied, where I was asked, could that be a poem? And so I thought about it some more, and I started looking into cento poems, which are basically a collage of other people's words. So cento in Latin means patchwork. And I was really excited by that. But the problem was I didn't cite anything. So I had a lot of research to do. I start first by often using this list even to title every sketch I do, because I am that person. And when I was going back and really trying to find the origin of a lot of my notes from that list, I was curious to see that I wrote things down wrong. What I had put as the full and the fleeing was actually the full and the fleeting. So I was I've always just been curious about those slippages in language. It happened a lot when I lived in Luxembourg. They can get really strange, like the ketchup in Brussels that says I want to eat myself. So it really changed my relationship to visual language, because I was living in Luxembourg, a country with 3 main languages, none of which I spoke, and they changed all the time. So at the grocery shopping, I'm trying to figure out, okay, maybe this cat is laundry detergent, maybe this duck that's extra powerful might have some cleaner for the toilet, this frog is an ecological choice. This is a very long way of saying a jigsaw. And then this one really baffled me. Does anybody have an idea of what this one here might be? Yeah. Ooh, that's a good guess. No. Any other guesses? That would have been a good guess too. Breadcrumbs. It took me forever to realize that. The context clues were not there. So I am often thinking about how surroundings, and even just when you're at a loss for words or don't have words to describe a feeling, how the things around you can sometimes show how you're feeling. Like, I often saw that with the trees that I would find on my walks back to my dog walking as my art practice. And so slowly but surely, tree branches entered my artwork. I started making slip cast molds of both pipes and the tree branch from my backyard, thinking about the time that tree roots clogged the pipes. And so I started thinking about plumbing as similar to language, how they both really do require routine maintenance. Without that, disaster. And I started noticing as I was researching pipes how often they're the same color as the walls. They're meant to hide in plain sight. So I did the weird thing of taking my ceramics to the hardware store and color matching it so that I could have the wall the exact same color. And I was thinking about, well, what does color as material say? The glaze that I was using used cobalt, and in German, cobalt means goblin, which, because of its historically hazardous means of mining, but blue is such a rich color. It has so many different meanings. Like for me, I grew up in North Carolina, so I often think about blue referencing the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I really love the essay by the author Rebecca Solnit, The Color of Distance. And so I was really thinking about blue also as the color of there seen from here and the color of where you are not. So I just loved the multiplicity of meanings in the color. So I painted an entire wall. Or more, if you come on Friday. But I also started to notice how I use or reference this color even in my writing. I did this project where I went back and looked at a year's worth of notes, and I started to mine them and create these erasure poems inspired by the poet Robin Cost-Lewis, as a way to try to see new patterns or ways of reading or what I didn't include in my writing. So in doing the erasure, I came up with this Tuesday, across hours, colored blue, arranged in folds, peeking into night, I noticed. So suddenly I started allowing my text, my own writing, to be legible in my work. But I also wanted to experiment with different ways of reading. So I started to also include my own text in ceramics. And what I found that was really intriguing about including text on ceramic vessels is that I couldn't read it in its entirety unless I was walking around the words. I was also fascinated with if I took the same text and I put it in different arrangements, could it also be legible? So this vessel and this one actually share the same text, but they have a different legibility to them. So for this show, opening on Friday, I decided to play in a similar way with the Cento poems, having the works on paper, but also the ceramics share some of the same text. So here you can kind of see how the text wraps around the vessel. But I've also included a variety of ceramics vessels and sculptures too that don't have text. So I kind of call this category my stuffed ceramics. And they have all kinds of things attached to them. You can see in this one I kind of lost space on my slide, but I put yarn, rubber, tubing, fortune cookie fortunes, beach plastic, heat sheets, etc. You can kind of see some of these here. And I was thinking about all the different ways that I could use these holes that were in these vessels as containers and as ways to illustrate all the different ways of holding, the nuances between stuffed versus wedged versus nestled, different ways of communicating that with objects. This piece is similar, it's made in a similar notion, but I actually just used all of the detritus and trash from my studio. So I was thinking about all of the things I'm consuming and comparing that to the words I'm consuming too, thinking about my own lived experience, what's in my periphery, my surroundings, what I'm absorbing, and what I'm also, what's becoming part of my own vocabulary. So I have this ongoing project called Sentences I Keep Near. And it's curious because it's never ending because I won't let it end. You can never buy it in its whole. You can only buy parts. And it changes in every location. So it was one of the pieces that was shown in Australia in this window gallery. Here it's shown in Portland at Carnation Contemporary. And for Nightingale, I didn't do T-pins, but I included some pieces that also have handwriting from family archives. This one's a little bit harder to see, but there's the white script that's vertical, or even just the high. So I was mining these family archives that I inherited. Here you can see the text, always yours. And I started to think about absence as presence, or even just this strong desire I have to hold on to things that aren't meant to be held on to. And even just these small coincidences of my granddad writing a letter and talking about driving through Luxembourg. And I was like, I lived there. And I did curious things like scanning over 50 envelopes, studying their different shapes, and using those shapes to inform some of my ceramic frames. Those were shown in an exhibition that I did in March of this year at Carnation Contemporary, where I was really thinking about this familial archive that I had inherited and how it might connect to my own sketchbook archive, because I'm that person who has scanned all of my sketchbooks for the last 14 years and have them labeled and archived on my website that I can pull up and reference at any time. Here you can kind of see a closer look of where some of those envelope shapes, my lines, and the handwriting are combined. So combining this handwriting with my own idiosyncratic gestures, my lines, and also trying to solve the framing problem with ceramics, which may or may not have caused more problems, but this piece has a little bit of it was the first piece where I used ceramic hangers to hold my works on paper. but it was also made in response to a conversation that happened just by chance, where I was talking with a Portland-based artist, Leslie Hickey. She was going to the New York Public Library picture collection, and I didn't know about this collection, but it's apparently a place where they have physical ephemera, like magazines and things, organized in folders that you can check out, which sounds amazing. So I was like, Leslie, check out the folder on holes and tell me more. And then she got back to me and said, there is no folder on holes. So I was like, there is a missing folder on holes. That's perfect. So I was like, I have to make that because the title of the show is File Not Found, and this is all so strange and exciting. So what's funny, though, is a few weeks ago, Leslie was at the library, and she sent me this photographic evidence. They have now made a folder of holes. So it exists now. But I kind of think about my own art practice as this tunnel of holes, because like I said, I do have that ongoing sketchbook archive. So this is a sketch in my sketchbook that I've also titled, scanned, and then it is easy to become a screen print, or maybe even the cover of a limited edition risograph book. That is also part of the show, and also because I couldn't help myself, it also has the folder of holes images in it as well. So there's a lot of repetition and variation in my work. This book also gives you all of the cento poems and all of the original references, or when I couldn't find the original references, I put something else that seemed like it might be in relation to it. So you can see how even just the images change with the cropped pages. So there's a lot of collage just embedded in the book. So the last project I do want to share before opening it up to questions is this collaborative project that I did in 2023, actually around the same time that I was told that I would get to come here and do a show. It was created with Ahuva Zaslavsky, a Portland-based artist, and we were given space in someone's backyard. So two poets created their backyard gallery called 1122, and we decided to turn their former shed into a writing room. So we created an entire alphabet of ceramic letters and created shelves on the walls that acted like lined paper for people to contribute, come in, and write. And it changed throughout. It was always interesting to read what was written. And so I wanted to incorporate this into my show here. I do think about language as this paradoxical container where it's both elusive and exacting. And it's always shape-shifting and changing. So these did change throughout the exhibit. And also partly because I'm nosy, and I really want to know what other people have to say and what they want to write. So that's my question to y'all. What are the words you keep near? So I think I'll open it up now for questions.